Well, welcome to Sportmentary, and this is Sportmentary himself. Joining us from Winnipeg is the Comish. Hey, Comish.
Hello there, I'm here.
All right. Well, we are doing a new segment. It's our special report segment. Kind of relates to our face-off segment, but it's on, let's say, more serious types of sporting stories. And for our first special report, the commish really wanted to talk about the lockout, and he had to convince me about it. At this point, I'm just fed up. I have enough writing articles than I have to talk more about lockout. But the NHL fanatic from Winnipeg convinced me about that. So you win out this time, Commish.
Well, I'm not so much a fanatic. I'm saying cancel the season. Let's move on to other things.
That's a topic that we decided. Should the NHL be canceled? And you're talking to a Winnipeg Jets fan. I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan, but you're talking a guy who's the thick and thin of it, a season ticket holder. And they had 1 year last year, and now they have the lockout, and that just puts a damper on the second year. And what would the Winnipeg Jets have been? And that's kind of why I say one of the reasons I say they can't cancel the season. They shouldn't cancel the season. I think they will cancel the season because you're not talking about smart people here. They're maybe book smart, but they're just not smart people. And I think what they've lost is significant, Kamesh, but what they will end up losing by a canceled season, it's just too much for the league. It's the goodwill's all gone. You're really ticking off the fan base. We don't know what that really will mean. But why even try and find out what that means? Do you hear me on that?
Well, I'm just kind of writing down what you said. Ticking off fan base, goodwill gone. I'm going to use a phrase that you introduced me to. We are sheeple. There will be, there'll be some people that won't come back at first, and there'll be some hesitation, and maybe somebody will say, let's boycott a game or two. But then once you get back to the excitement of hockey and, what we've been born to watch and love, all will be forgiven. They forgave them after the 2004-2005 lockout. And I did some research. I don't like to do research of these because, I think me and you have been around long enough to kind of know that stats are for losers, but sometimes you got to just put it out there. 2004-2005 lockout, the average franchise was worth $163 million.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I know where you're going with it.
Listen to me. The three most valuable franchises were, you could probably guess where they were, but
Toronto, New York. I know Toronto's the most.
The Toronto, New York, Philly, and they were they ranged from 264 to 282.
And I think the Toronto Maple Leafs came in at what, $1 billion or something? I don't know.
Right. So flash forward to this. We're less than 10 years out of since the last lockout, and this is according to Forbes. So
you're making my case. First of all,
listen to me, but according to Forbes, right?
Just spit it out.
The average team is worth $239 million now. So the lockout didn't affect
that average is being skewed by the top 10 teams.
And this lockout, sorry to step over you and your vociferousness, but this lockout is to try to save the league. It's trying to save the league.
It's trying to save some franchises. I won't dispute that there's some franchises that are increased in value. We know that it's disproportionate to those that aren't part of that average. It's really skewed. I would even say maybe even 5 or 6 teams skews that average. If you look at the NFL, you could probably see that the average franchises have increased. I don't know about the NBA, but you might see some of that happening too. My point being is that the average franchise has increased. Sure it has, right? In certain teams. We know Toronto. Toronto can lose every game for the next 50 years and their franchise will still increase in value. And
I'm pretty sure they have lost most of their games.
Right, and people don't know because they're like, it doesn't matter if they're losing, right? We don't know what Forbes, when that article came out, people were going, well, how they value that Toronto Maple Leafs of all teams is the most valuable town. The Montreal Canadiens isn't, the New York Rangers weren't. I dispute this in Forbes. I'm not disputing the top three, I'm just disputing the order of it. So I don't know really what they're gathering, how they're basing it off, if they're just pulling it out of their head and saying this is what it's worth. Who knows what it's really worth, right? What I'm telling you is, you talk about the longevity, you probably talk about the record season that they had last year of $3.3 billion. And once again I say, how did it get to $3.3 billion? We obviously know they made $3.3 billion. And like I mentioned to you off air, I would have loved to see this year, right? A smart league saying we're going to capitalize on the $3.3 billion. We're going to try and get even better than that and make another record, and compare that, a full NHL season, to a full NBA season, because that's our closest competitor, right? We can't compare about MLB and NFL. NBA still outranks us, but we can compare that a little bit. And with an NBA season, a full NBA season, how do our revenues compare? The NHL's revenues compared to an NBA with the full season? Because part of my argument is that there was an NBA, and not that all NBA fans are going to watch NHL hockey, but I would say that we picked up some of that there in the first half of the NHL season. And then because the hockey was exciting last year, right? I really believe it was one of the more exciting years, talent-wise and game-wise and fun-wise, that generated some of that revenue. I don't know that. We won't know that. We might never know that now because of what is the damage done to the NHL with having at least 40% of the season scrapped, all right? And the best case scenario is maybe having a season where they play under 60% of the games. Okay, and that leads me into another reason why they should. 60%, that means you lose, they'll end up losing 42% because they'll play 58% of the games. 42% of $3.3 billion or something like, I believe it was like 1.1 or 1.2 billion is what they would lose if they are able to play 48 games. Now,
this isn't so much to me about the money.
Wait, where they're off with the players has been narrowed down, and I might be wrong, but somewhere about maybe 300 million in total, right? Take that over a 6-year agreement, and they're arguing between 8 and 6 and whatever. Let's say 6, okay? 1.8 billion to 2 billion. All right? It's a wash. Just agree. Cut your losses now. You're gonna lose more money. You're gonna lose a fan base. That's my argument. You have to have a season. Because they'll lose another 1.9 billion or whatever it is. They'll end up losing 3.3 billion in total and never recoup that.
Well, I guess a league that's already lost billions of dollars to a lockout is probably not afraid to lose again. If they see that it's in the best interest of the league not to play games this year, I think all your numbers can easily be turned the other way, and there's teams that are losing money as well. So, you know what? I don't think you can play the numbers game.
I don't know. You're the stats guy, and you can.
Well, I just like to throw them out there to try to throw you off.
The stats. I don't believe that after the last lockout, attendance and fan loyalty was something that was instantaneous. I believe that was in the last couple of years. Okay.
Yeah, but that's the damage is done already.
Right. What I'm saying is that because of that, but they lost a whole season, not even a half season. And part of my argument is there is damage done, right? The more, each month that's gone by, more and more people have got disgruntled because this thing is dragging out. But if you cancel the whole season, okay, and you scrap that whole season, and you say in a couple of weeks, that's it. It's going to have even more damage. And here's even a bigger thing. So let's say they scrap the season, right? Now they're not playing. When will they meet again? Are they going to continue to meet now? Or are they going to say we have time till next season, we'll meet in the spring? And if they meet in the spring, what's going to happen? Will they end up getting to a point where they scrap preseason games and potentially get to a point that where they're They are scrambling to start and have a full regular season. And that's my point.
Well, here's where the NHL made the mistake, though. They never set a drop-dead deadline. They haven't said if we, well, they've hinted.
Kind of, in a roundabout way.
They've hinted at it, but you know what? Nothing gets people to the table or to do anything like a good deadline. And
they have to,
they haven't said it. They haven't said it in stone.
He said, okay, because you can extrapolate. Bettman said, and he looked back on the last lockout, all right, and the season was finally scrapped, or he looked at the NBA and he compared it. They need, for the integrity of the game, he said that they need a 48-game schedule. 48 games per team. Okay? So, and I haven't looked at a calendar. You probably have one in front of you because I know that's the type of guy you are. It's somewhere 23rd of January, 25th of January, whatever it takes us to, that we know that you can look at every game and say, well, when does it have to start to have a 48-game schedule? It's something like the third week of January. That is the drop dead. Because he's already said, for the integrity of the game, we need a 48-game schedule. He's basically said, if we can't have a 48-game schedule, we're done. So now you have 5 weeks, right? But you have to get to training camp at least 10 days to 2 weeks before that, right? So you really have to have an agreement within the next 2 weeks for them to be able to plan for a 48-game schedule. They're not going to go to the last day. What I'm saying is, January 3rd or so, if there's no agreement and we get to the Christmas time and we get to New Year's where they're not going to meet, we're running out of days. What I'm saying is the season's done. If they don't have a deal in the next day or two, the season's done.
The next day or two? No. I think they have till they have till at least January 1st.
Yeah, but they're not going to meet January 1st. They're not going to meet the 31st. Okay, they're not going to meet the 24th or 25th, possibly the 26th.
Yeah, fine. They have till January 5th, let's say. Because
there's Boxing Day in Canada.
Listen, you need 2 weeks for the training camp, and you got to start your games by the 24th of January.
Right, I said the 23rd.
There's plenty of time for them to resolve this.
My
personal opinion is I've lost interest. I don't care what happens this season. It's going to be season.
Fine. And I have two. You know, I've talked. This is getting ridiculous. It's getting to the point where I'm watching NBA basketball for crying out loud.
And that is ridiculous.
And you know what I feel about that. And the funny thing is there's some games that have been pretty exciting. The only difference that I'll say is that I've been watching more NBA basketball. And do you want to know how I follow it, Comish?
How?
I go into one of those sites that has a running score, if you know what I mean. I can't mention the name, but you know what I'm getting at. It's a big sports site, and it'll tell you where they are on the court and give you updated scores, right? So I'll occasionally look at that, see where the score is. I did this with the Knicks game last night. It was pretty damn close. I watched the last 6 minutes. It was great basketball. I watched 6 minutes of a 48-minute game, and I really basically felt like I watched the whole game.
Well, and I watched the last 2 minutes of the Lakers-Cleveland game, and that was enough for me.
That's all you know. So, right, you're watching a fraction of the game, and they're pretty exciting for that period of time, but you can play tiddlywinks for the rest of the time.
I can't hold my attention like a hockey game. Well, but
right, that's exactly what I'm saying. I can watch a hockey game. I can watch a bad hockey game if it's my team from start to finish.
But that's because it's your team.
That's because it's my game.
Oh, your game.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, your game. But the fact is, look, I can't see them canceling the season. I'm just saying they should cancel it because I've lost interest, and I would like to take a poll and see how many fans lost interest. And I was reading in a Winnipeg newspaper, one of them.
Free Press, we can say it. They're friends of ours.
Can we?
Yeah.
They did do a poll, and it seems like I thought it was about 47 or 37% of fans would not follow the season if it were to start today. But my gut tells me that those people would change their mind after a couple weeks. They get back into it. Again, I'm going back to the sheeple thing, and that's why I think that From my perspective, canceling the season won't harm the league in the long run. The short term, it might be painful. The long run, they got to get a deal done that works for teams like Winnipeg and smaller market teams.
I think the last piece, and then we got to wrap it up. When we talk about losing fans, when we talk about fan loyalty, we talk about damage to the game, we need, there's two main elements, and within the second element, there's another element to that. So what I'm saying is, there are Canadian fans, and then there are U.S. fans. Canadian fans, it'd be very hard to turn them off long term. The vast majority of Canadian hockey fans are going to come back to the NHL day one when it comes back. Okay? Maybe a few people don't order the NHL ticket or whatever it's called, right? But eventually they will because they'll want to follow their team. Now we talk about the U.S. market, right? And we break the U.S. market into Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, New York, Boston, and Philly. And I'm probably missing a couple teams. But pretty much that's the hotbed of hockey for the NHL franchises, right? They're good as gold, guaranteed. They will survive.
Right. What's your point?
We're talking 18 teams. Take out 17 or 18 teams, and you take out the Canadian teams, and you take out the handful of U.S. market. The majority of U.S. teams, that is where they'll lose, and that's where they can't afford to lose. Even with attrition, and they lose 5 clubs, you're still looking at 13 teams that will be decimated by it, and now those 13 teams is going to drive into the revenue of the NHL. You can't.
There's already the teams that are making money, or the teams that are propping up the league. This lockout's not going to change.
I'm telling you that it will have damage. I say that a full season lost will have damage. Will the NHL recover? I've written about this. Will the NHL recover? Who knows, to the same extent of a record season, and possibly they will. But what we're talking about, sir, we're talking about if you look at 2004, you look at maybe the revenue started increasing in 2010-ish, okay? We had a record year in 2011, and maybe go back to 2009. It took them 5 regular seasons to recoup that. And
yeah, but those 5 regular seasons, they had the salary cap in place. They'll still have that in place. They introduced new events to the league that kind of got it on the radar of some Americans, specifically the Outdoor Classic. Those things will all still be there. It's just going to be, It'll be a bit of a period of indifference.
Will they ever recover? They will recover. To what extent, we don't know. This is like we're throwing darts at a dartboard. We don't know. Will there be damage? For sure. There was damage done probably in the first couple months of the lockout. Now
we throw darts at a dartboard like you do. No.
Well, I miss every time, but that's beside the point. But I can't hit the darn dartboard. You know that. But who cares? But what I'm saying is, we don't know the extent of the damage. We can guess. We can say that, sure, the NHL's not going to fold because it loses a season, and I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that they won't ever recover. And I don't know how long it would take them to recover. As I said, we don't know the extent of the damage. Bottom line is there will be some damage. You lose a whole season, it's multiplied. And from a pure numbers and cents game, I think what they lose, and not long, what I'm saying is just if you take it, they're arguing about pennies and they're losing just from this year. If they lose a lockout, they're losing $3.3 billion. And if they're talking about being off about $300 or $400 million, I say that sure there are important things to the longevity of the game, but come on, somewhere in the middle there's got to be a compromise. Because you're really arguing pennies at this point.
But are you arguing pennies? We're not really. Are we pretty
in a metaphorical sense? What I'm saying is it doesn't make sense. I think these two sides are so dug into their positions that they can't think of compromise. And one last thing, again, I don't remember this guy's name, but I was reading the Winnipeg Free Press, and yes, I'm plugging them because you know what? It's a darn good paper. So anyway, the Winnipeg Free Press or was CBC.com, one of those two, but quality on hockey, right? And they had an arbitrator, some guy that had been an arbitrator in his career. He's now retired, and he's an expert. And he has said, being an expert in dealing with this stuff, he has never seen anything as ridiculous and amateurish as this as this lockout and the inability of these two sides to come to an agreement by this point. So this is a professional arbitrator, somebody who did it for industry, and of course he was doing it with unions between companies in the manufacturing sector. All right, he doesn't even have the words to express what's going on. So my point is, they're so dug in their position, and it's killing the game. And know what I say? Bring on the KHL already.
Oh, have you seen highlights of that? I don't think you were gonna.
No.
I don't think that league is a threat to this league. This is still the best league in the world. And when it comes back, it'll be slow, but you know what? Give the players the year off. There's some guys that'll have to retire that probably don't need to play anyways. 48 more games, and
hey,
aside for a paycheck. And will their hearts really be in it? I think it'll take a while to get over it. It might take 48 games. So,
well, I had to mention the KHL because you know how I feel, but I definitely know how you feel about the KHL. So those are the one. You want to know something funny? The KHL and other European leagues, they actually have a real value to the NHL. Do you know what that is?
That value.
They're real value. You take the Sedins, right? And I don't know what European league that they're playing if they are playing. But you know what the benefit to the NHL with having them play in Europe?
Where is that? What's that?
All right. If you thought that their on-ice diving skills were pretty good before this lockout, just you wait. They're going to be even better at their diving skills, dude.
Well, unfortunately, the Sedins are not playing in Europe unless the season's canceled. I read an article about them. So.
Well, you know what I mean.
Anyway, I'm going to leave with this thought. I'm always right and you're usually wrong. In this case, there probably is no right or wrong. But the fact is, say your goodbyes. And I got a perfect outro song for this because I know people cannot give up the NHL. So.
All right. Well, we'll meet you next time on either a special report or a face-off. And you have a good week, dude.
And you too.
All right.
Here we go.